Two benchmark tables are open on this desk right now, published 3 days apart by two of the biggest AI labs on Earth, and they cite the same test. Same benchmark, same version number, printed in both tables with scores attached. And here is the problem this entire video exists to solve. Those scores cannot be compared. Not shouldn't be. Cannot. Ranking one above the other is a category error. And I'll prove it with their own footnotes. This was the week the scoreboard broke. 4 labs published benchmark tables in 7 days. A new open flagship, a new workhorse, a new agent-era model gone generally available, a new challenger, each table beautiful, each one bold-facing its wins, and the coverage dutifully reading them all as one big leaderboard. It isn't one. It never was. And this week finally makes that impossible to ignore, because the collisions are now sitting in plain sight. So today is not a launch video. It's the video I've been building toward for a month. The decoder. 3 things. First, the exhibit. 1 benchmark, 2 vendor tables, and, once you read the footnotes, completely different rules of play. We'll walk the collision live, number by number, and you'll see exactly where the comparison dies. This one example will change how you read every table you see for the rest of the year. Second, the tool. 5 questions that decode any benchmark table from any lab forever. They fit on a card. By the end, you'll run them in about 30 seconds per table, and I promise the tables will never look the same, including the flattering ones from labs you like. And third, the fine print where the launches actually live. A single adjective in this week's pricing sentence that carries a timer. Rows that are missing, and why absence from a table is a decision, not an accident. And a judge's name, hiding in a footnote that quietly undermines the exam it graded. Plan. Why this week broke the scoreboard, the 5 questions, the collision walked live. What these tables are honestly good for, the etiquette scoreboard, what an honest table looks like. Because one of this week's tables comes surprisingly close. Who pays, honest limits, and the step back. Standards note, and today it's the whole point. I've been through 2 of the 4 tables line by line, and everything quoted from them is verbatim. The other 2 are still on my desk. I haven't given them that same treatment yet, so they contribute 0 numbers today. They're named, and they're next. That's just the house rule. A number doesn't air until I've sat with its footnotes. Let's go. Why this week broke the scoreboard. Understand what changed. Benchmarks used to be something researchers did to models. Somewhere in the last 2 years, they became something vendors do for launches. The table moved from the appendix to the poster. Every release now ships as a grid of bold numbers, because a grid of bold numbers is the most shareable object in this industry. It screenshots clean, it argues for you, and it compresses 100 pages of nuance into, we're the big font. And this week, 4 of them landed in 7 days. An open 27B with the most audacious table I've ever seen a lab print. A workhorse model from the biggest platform company alive, refreshed after just 3 weeks, with an introductory price attached. A flagship agent model gone generally available the same day its lab open-sourced a harness, and a challenger update entering the charts. 4 tables, overlapping tests, incompatible rules, and a news cycle reading them as one league. One sentence from this channel's recent history frames everything that follows. A model score is a duet, the weights and the loop around them, and every leaderboard credits one performer. Hold that. Now let's build the tool. The 5 questions, the table decoder. Run these in order every time on every table. They fit on a card, and the card is in the pinned comment. Question 1. Which test exactly? Not the coding benchmark. The version, the subset, the variant. This week's tables cite Frontier Code 1.1, main, and DeepSWE v 1.1. Those suffixes are load-bearing. A version bump can regrade history, a subset can flatter, a verified variant is a different exam from the raw set. If a table says just the family name with no version, that's not a detail omitted. That's a question already dodged. And notice something genuinely good this week. The tests themselves are increasingly hosted by third parties. An agent coding bench run by a dev tools company, an automation bench run by a workflow company, a web arena run by a rating site. Neutralish referees are a real improvement. The referees are improving faster than the etiquette. Question 2. Whose harness ran it? The Duet question, and this week's tables answer it in opposite ways. The Open Labs card states its stopwatch in the footnote, verbatim, evaluated, with the Claude code harness at temperature 1.0, top P 0.95, and a 256K context window. A rivals harness, named with settings. You may remember what this channel said about that move. Walking into the champion's gym and posting numbers on the champion's equipment. Agree or not, it's disclosed. You know which car ran the lap. The workhorse post? I went through the announcement twice looking for it. The harness is not stated, and not stated is an answer. It means you cannot know whether you're looking at the weights, the loop, or the choreography between them. The industry itself knows this cuts deep. A frontier lab shipped a benchmarking mode this very week, whose entire purpose is stripping the loop down to 2 tools so the weights can be heard alone. When vendors start shipping strip the loop switches, the era of pretending the loop doesn't exist is over. And here's why the harness disclosure matters beyond principle. A fully conditioned RAW is reproducible. Name the harness, the temperature, the context budget, and the version, and any independent lab can rerun the row next week, confirm it, break it, or bracket it. Leave the harness unstated and the row can't even be failed properly. There's nothing to rerun, only something to repeat. That's the dividing line worth carving. A benchmark row is either a recipe or a rumor. Recipes get cooked by strangers within days, and this week's most conditioned table will face exactly that test. Rumors just get retweeted. Question 3. Same conditions for every row? The subtlest one, and this week's open card confesses it in writing, verbatim, except for the closed flagship, which uses the officially reported score. All models are evaluated with the Claude Code harness. Problematic tasks were corrected, and all baseline models were re-evaluated on the refined benchmark. Read that twice. One row imported from the rival's own press materials. Every other row rerun by the table's author on a version of the exam the author corrected. That's not fraud. It's printed right there, which is exactly why you must read footnotes. But it means the table's rows live under different laws. Stamp it the way this channel always stamps it, not apples to apples. Any table that mixes official scores with reruns owes you a flag on every mixed row. Almost none provide it. Question 4. Who's missing from the table? Rosters are chosen. The workhorse launch measures itself against its own predecessor and a selected set of mid-tier rivals. And the one competitor whose economics would most complicate the story is, going by the launch charts making the rounds this week, simply not there. Meanwhile, the open card includes its scariest rival and prints losses against it. Terminal coding lost by 5 points. The hardest exam lost by 9. Printed, bolded for the other side. And where it lacks numbers, it prints empty cells, 2 dashes, rather than silently dropping the row. Here's the etiquette rule that falls out. An empty cell is honest. An empty chair is strategy. Before you read a single score, read the guest list. Question 5. Who judges, and what is the price column hiding? 2 fine print habits. 1 question. The judge. The open card's hardest benchmark carries a footnote 4 words long. Judged by GPT-4o, a previous generation model from a rival lab grading a frontier exam. An aging referee scores conservatively and misses what it can't recognize. The footnote quietly caps how seriously the row can be taken, in either direction. And the price. The workhorse post's headline economics arrive in 1 adjective, an introductory price of half the original I cost. Introductory is a word with a timer inside it. The launch chart's own fine print, screenshotted everywhere this week, puts the reversion at the start of next year, which means every benchmark per cost chart being made this week has an expiry date printed on it that almost nobody is reading aloud. The score column gets the bold font. The price column gets the asterisk. Read the asterisk. That's the tool. Which test, whose harness, same conditions, who's missing, who judges, and when does the price expire? 30 seconds per table. Now watch it work. The collision, walked live. Exhibit A. The benchmark is DeepSWE, version 1.1, agentic software engineering, hosted by a third party. It appears in both tables on this desk. The workhorse post reports 65.3 against 49.0 for its own 3-week-old predecessor. The open card reports 42.2 against 13.3 for its predecessor. The internet's instinct, and I've watched it happen all week, is to stack those. 65 beats, 42, story filed. Now, run the questions. Whose harness? The open card tells you, a rival's agent harness, temperature 1, 250,000 context, settings printed. The workhorse announcement, not stated. Same conditions, unknowable across the 2. Different scaffolds, different context budgets, possibly different task handling. The open card even tells you it corrects tasks on another benchmark, so its local customs differ from anyone else's by admission. Same test name, yes. Same race? You have no evidence of that at all. So here is the truth about those 2 numbers. They are 2 different experiments that happen to share a noun. One is a lap time from a named car on a named track in named weather. The other is a lap time with the car and track redacted. 65 versus 42 tells you nothing about the two models. And I want to be fair in both directions, because the workhorse might well win a controlled rematch. The point is that this table pair cannot tell you that. What the numbers can tell you, and this is the reframe to keep, is each lab's progress against itself. 49 to 65 in 3 weeks is a startling self-delta. Whatever the harness is, it's the same harness on both of that vendor's rows, so the gap is real progress on their own terms. 13 to 42 generation over generation is a tripling under printed conditions. Both of those are meaningful. Both survive the decoder. The cross-table ranking does not. Which mints today's law, and it's the whole video in 9 words. Self-deltas are measurements, rival gaps are advertisements. Read every vendor table vertically, their today against their yesterday where conditions hold constant, and treat every horizontal glance at a rival as marketing until the conditions are printed. Vertical is data, horizontal is theater. The tables this week are excellent data and loud theater in the same image. A second collision, smaller, sharper, inside one table. Exhibit B needs only one table because the collision is between 2 of its own rows. The open card's headline claim is its agentic coding win over the strongest closed model, a clear multi-point lead, bolded. Now apply question 3 using the card's own footnote. The closed model's score is the officially reported score, while the open model's number comes from the card author's own runs, on the refined version of the benchmark where problematic tasks were corrected. So the 2 rows in the headline matchup were produced under different regimes, one imported from the rival's press materials, one home-cooked on a home-corrected exam, and the footnote says so plainly to its credit. What can you honestly conclude? Exactly what this channel concluded the day that card dropped. The pattern is credible. You don't footnote your way to a tripling against your own predecessor. But the placement against the rival is provisional until someone runs both models under one regime. That's not cynicism. It's just refusing to let a bold font finish an experiment that hasn't been run. The footnote gave you everything you needed. Most readers never got past the bold. What an honest table looks like, the Etiquette Scoreboard. Because this shouldn't only be criticism. One of this week's tables gets surprisingly close to a gold standard, and naming the standard is how it spreads. 7 habits, each one observed in the wild this week. Most of them, remarkably, in the same document. Print your losses, bolded for the winner. The open card hands its rival 3 victories in its own launch material, and that buys more trust than any win. Print your conditions. Harness, temperature, context, run counts, timeouts. The card's in-house bench even discloses average of 3 with an 8-hour timeout. Label in-house benchmarks as in-house. Self-refereed rows, flagged as such, scored accordingly by the reader. Print empty cells instead of silently dropping rivals. Flag mixed provenance. When one row is an official score and the rest are your reruns, say so as the card does, verbatim. Name your judge, even when the name undermines you, and show your anti-cheating work. The same card disables the shell commands agents use to peek at answers, listing them. Pip download, pip install, git clone. That footnote should be industry standard everywhere agents are benchmarked. 7 habits. No table this week hits all 7. The best one hits 5 or 6, the glossiest hits 2. And that spread, not any single score, is the real ranking published this week. Grade the tables and the models sort themselves out over the following month, when the independent runs land, as they always do. How to use tables anyway. The 3 safe reads. Because the decoder isn't nihilism, tables carry real information if you read them along the grain. 3 reads survive all 5 questions. Read 1, vertical self-deltas. A vendor versus its own past, same table, same unstated but consistent harness, that's a controlled experiment by accident. And this week's verticals are the actual headlines. A workhorse jumping 16 points on an agent coding bench in 3 weeks. A document benchmark rising 12. An open model tripling generation over generation under printed conditions. Whatever you think of the horizontal theater, the vertical story this week is unambiguous. Agentic capability is compounding at a monthly cadence now. That's the real news, and it needed no cross-table ranking to be true. Red 2, shared condition clusters. Inside one table, the rows the author ran itself under one stated regime form a valid mini-league. Compare those freely because the conditions cancel out. The open card self-run rows can be ranked against each other all day. Just fence off the imported rows. The footnote tells you which ones they are. Read 3, directional convergence. When 4 tables under 4 incompatible rule sets all show the same direction. Agent benchmarks leaping while classic knowledge exams inch. The direction is trustworthy, even though no magnitude is. Incompatible experiments that agree on the trend are, together, stronger evidence than any one number in any one table. So carve the working rule. Trust directions across tables, trust magnitudes only within them. vertical, clustered, directional. Everything else is decoration until the independents run it. Who pays? The economics of the table wars. Standing rule, applied to the meta. Who pays for beautiful tables? Look at what each party gets. The labs get the screenshot, the single image that does a launch's marketing for free, which is precisely why the bold font goes on the score and the timer goes in the adjective next to the price. The third-party benchmark hosts get to become referees of record, real influence, and mostly earned. Expect them to matter more every quarter and expect pressure on them to grow in proportion. The coverage economy pays nothing and charges attention. Horizontal readings are effortless content, which is why you drowned in them this week. And the reader who reads horizontally pays everything. Decisions made on cross-table rankings that were never valid, budgeted on introductory prices that expire in months. The discount, to be clear about the mechanism, is marketing spend. Having a workhorse price at launch buys adoption and buys every per-cost chart made during the honeymoon, and the reversion arrives after the narrative has hardened. Nothing dishonest, all disclosed in fine print, all working exactly as designed. The decoder's job is just to read the design out loud. And the good news, from a month of watching this exact cycle, the gap always closes. Within days of every launch this season, the third-party hosts post their own runs. The community reruns the recipes, the rows that were recipes anyway, and the honeymoon numbers get regraded in public. The decoder isn't a permanent stance of doubt. It's a tool for the gap. The 72 hours between launch day and Independence Day, which is precisely when the screenshots do their damage and the purchase decisions get made, survive the gap unranked and the rankings arrive on their own. Honest limits, 5. 1. 2 of the 4 tables, read in full. 2. Not yet. The Agent-era flagships card and the Challengers material get 0 numbers here, for one reason. I haven't sat down with them yet, and this channel doesn't quote tables it hasn't been through. Both get this exact treatment next. Consider the threads planted. 2. I worked from the workhorse post's main text. Its later chart pages and agent benchmark claims are still on the pile, so anything beyond the core announcement, including the rival rows inside those charts, stays out of this video or gets clearly flagged when mentioned. 3. Nothing here was reproduced. No benchmark was rerun, no model tested. This is a reading of published claims and published footnotes, which is exactly the skill being taught. 4. Prices appear only as multiples, halves, and doublings per this channel's standing rule, and the reversion date is the chart's own fine print. Quoted, charts can change, so hold it loosely. 5. The decoder judges disclosure, not capability. A model behind an opaque table may be wonderful. A model behind an honest table may disappoint. The 5 questions rank what you can know. The knowing has to come before the ranking, which is the entire argument. Step back, because this week rhymes with everything this channel has covered this month, and the rhyme has a name. Text now ships with provenance woven into its word choices. A Frontier harness ships an append-only log of everything its model ever saw. Another vendor ships a mode whose sole purpose is benchmarking with the loop stripped away. Evidence cards on this channel carry their file in line, and the week's best launch table prints its losses, its judge, its settings, and its corrections. Different vendors, different layers, one converging sentence, show the conditions, or the number doesn't count. The industry is slowly building the receipts culture it spent 2 years skipping, from the sampler up to the scoreboard. And the tables are simply the last, loudest place the old habits survive. So the scoreboard era is ending not because scores stopped mattering, but because unconditioned scores stopped meaning. What replaces it is already visible in this week's best footnotes. The conditions era, where the fine print is the product and the bold number is just its headline. You now hold the 5 questions. You will never unsee the empty chairs. And this video has 2 name sequels already queued. The 2 unread tables from this same week get the full treatment when they land on this desk. And there's a benchmark fight from the harness world, the one about self-refining loops and an interactive games exam that deserves this decoder at maximum power. Threads planted, in the open as always. Here's my question, and I'll pin it below. If you could make one disclosure mandatory on every benchmark table published from tomorrow morning, one line, enforced forever, what is it? The harness? The temperature? The run count? Official versus rerun flags? The price column's expiry date? One rule, and defend it in a sentence. The best answers get built into the decoder card when the next table war starts, which, on this month's evidence, is about a week away. Every link, both tables read today, the third-party benchmark hosts, and this channel's breakdowns that this video leans on, the open flagships card read, the harness with the strip the loop mode, and the Duet law's origin, is in the description. Open either table tonight and run the 5 questions yourself. The 30 seconds will pay you back for years. That's the standard here. 2 tables actually read, 2 honestly queued, every quoted footnote verbatim, the collision proven rather than asserted, the etiquette named so it can spread, and not one secondhand number on the air. If you'd rather own your tools than rent them, subscribe. That's what we do every single day. I'll see you in the next one.